Hello trainers, Professor Palm here. Some people say time really flies when you're having fun and playing games, and I completely agree because it's hard to believe that a decade ago, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out. You never forget the first region you start in. I know that I started in Hoenn with Pokemon Emerald. So, going back in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was a wonderful homecoming for me, and I hope that it was the same for so many of you as well. And for those of you who never got to play Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald in the original Game Boy era, I hope that you got to enjoy it in the Nintendo 3DS and 2DS era. It felt so great to go back to the Hoenn region once again. Every region is unique for what they introduce and what they bring out, especially with the legendary Pokemon. The Weather Trio is really the big highlight of Hoenn. It really also became the first region that tried to be completely different from the others when it first came out. While we've had so many other regions come out, there's just a simple charm about the Hoenn region that just has never been met again. While a lot of us really did enjoy these games, I'd say that it was somewhat of a mixed bag at first, as a lot of us were really expecting to get Pokemon Z version. Well, it's great to know that, as of next year, we're gonna somewhat get Z with Pokemon Legends Z to A. So yeah, getting Hoenn Remakes was kind of a surprise, but it really was a welcomed one, as a lot of us were curious to go back to a region and even introduce Mega Evolution to it. Oh, and let me tell you, it did not disappoint. For the core series of games, we've had a lot of great remakes, and we've also had remakes that we want to forget. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, I would say, are some of the good remakes, as they decided to do things that not a lot of other remakes had done at the time. Of course that some stuff was accessible, but this game took things a step further. Looking back 10 years later to where we are now, how did these games hold up? Are they still really good, or has time gone on and made these games not so great? Why don't we find out together? For some of us Pokemon fans, Hoenn is where it all started for us back in Gen 3, as those games were really good. And if you enjoyed the original Hoenn games, then you'll love the remakes. And for those of you who never got a chance to play the originals, you'll have a lot of fun in these games. As, like most remakes, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire welcomes you back to the Hoenn region, and it gets you back on track very fast. What makes Hoenn such a standout from most regions is not only can you explore the region on the land and the sea, you can also explore it from the darkest depths of Hoenn's oceans to the highest heights of the sky. And when I think about other things that this game did, it was everything that a remake should be. It should make you feel like it's the original, but even better. While the story is exactly as it was back in Ruby and Sapphire, in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, there are a lot of different changes. One of the most welcomed one of all is the Mega Evolution and Primal Reversion. Gen 6 was kind enough to bring what we only just discovered in Kalos into these games so we could discover even more. And it also introduced a lot of other new Pokemon with Mega Evolutions. Honestly, with how many Pokemon that came from the Hoenn region that had Megas, it was pretty inevitable we would get a remake. While Groudon and Kyogre were already pretty powerful Pokemon when we met them in the original games, these remakes made them even stronger, introducing Primal Reversion, which I think was a brilliant idea. Since we've already seen how powerful that our super ancient weather duo, Groudon and Kyogre, can be, the idea of Primal Revision made them even scarier. As we already know that they're the bringers of the sun and the rainfall, this just shows how monstrous they can be. Having that primordial sun or even that primordial storm that can destroy the world. One of it can drown the world in just a matter of hours, while the other one can burn away the entire planet. Steven Stone himself also felt like a better champion. While his team was pretty much the same as we remember it, I think that they made his character a little bit better than what they did in the original games. It's like they took notes from Emerald as well as Heart Gold and Soul Silver and decided not just to make him a better character, but also make him a real defender of the Hoenn region. It's like that they took ideas from Cynthia as well as a few other champions that have really gone above and beyond for the region and decided to really show that he is in charge and will not let anything go down. It may sound kind of strange, but I think that we need more champions like that. As fun as the original Ruby and Sapphire games were, Emerald is where Hoenn shined the brightest. Unfortunately, with remakes, we never get a third version. So, Pokemon came up with a brilliant idea, the Delta episode. For postgame, the story continues, and a meteorite is about to hit the planet and destroy everything on it. Our only hope, it appears to be, is Rayquaza. But as cool as Rayquaza is, we never really got to know more about its backstory. Unlike both Groudon and Kyogre, who had their lore explained better, Rayquaza never had really anything talked about it. However, things changed as enter the lore keeper, Zinnia. With Zinnia, not only did we learn new things about Rayquaza and its lore, but we also learned about Mega Rayquaza as well as how Mega Evolution was born, and the great battle it had with both Groudon and Kyogre years ago. As it turns out, in Rayquaza's lore, it was the very first Pokemon that ever achieved Mega Evolution, and just like other lore keepers before her, Zinnia also uses it herself. After a very long quest helping Zinnia, you finally meet her at Sky Pillar. After her big story, she summons Rayquaza, and this is where the final challenge really goes off the rails. First, Zinnia summons Rayquaza, but unfortunately, she's unable to Mega Evolve it. So, you step up and fight Rayquaza, and after you catch it, you have a fight with Zinnia to prove that you and Rayquaza are one. Then you go with Rayquaza in your Magma or Aqua suit into space, where Rayquaza Mega Evolves and destroys the meteorite once and for all. So, everything's good. Crisis averted. But wait, something comes out of it. Oh, it's just a little triangle. No, wait, it's moving. It's moving all across the screen. Can it be? It is! It's Deoxys. That's right. The real big bad of the story is Deoxys. Oh, and this final battle of the Delta episode against Deoxys takes place in space. Honestly, this was one of the coolest battles ever, as this was the very first time we had an off-world battle. After finally saving the world from its greatest threat and returning to Earth, Zinnia leaves you a letter wishing you well, and she's never seen again. But she is seen at Meteor Falls, deciding what to do next with her life. She's such a great character, and she made the post-game so epic. It ends with you and your rival goofing around at Moss Deep Space Center before going home, knowing you saved the world from one of the greatest threats it's ever had, and, in my opinion, ending the Delta episode on a beautiful note. Every remake tries to do new things with it. For Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they brought many cool things to the table, whether it be the redesigns of old characters, adding in new characters, as well as new parts of the story, they were all very welcomed. So, here are a few welcomed additions from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire that I really liked. Mega Evolution was such a welcomed gimmick, and I was so glad that it came back for these games. I'm also so glad that we got even more Mega Evolutions introduced in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. We definitely got way more NPCs from what we had in X and Y. We went from only 3 in X and Y to 11 in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. While I wish the gym leaders used it, I'm glad that our rivals used it, as well as members of the Elite Four and Steven Stone. Oh, and Maxine Archie too. I'm glad that unlike other remakes, who usually keep the Pokedex as well as the trainer's Pokemon to what they were in the original games, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did not ignore Generation 4's evolution and baby Pokemon to the Gen 3 Pokemon that were introduced. So, Wally, instead of having a Gardevoir, instead had a Gallade, as well as a Mega Gallade, which was a very welcomed addition, as was the Elite Four members Phoebe and Glacia using a Dusknoir and Frostlass for their battles. It actually worked so well that I forgot that some of these Pokemon they used were not introduced in Gen 3, but rather Gen 4. Even though I'm not a huge fan of contests, it was fun to do, and it was great to see them again, considering the fact that they vanished for a very long time. But what I really liked the most was that now you got to wear some really cool outfits for the contests. Whether you wear the Rockstar outfit or the Popstar outfit, they were stunning. But what I think I liked the most was also the inclusion of Cosplay Pikachu. All those outfits it wore, as well as the signature moves, made it a real standout. Also, it was fun to color coordinate as well as wear the same thing as Pikachu. The soaring feature was breathtaking. Flying all around the Hoenn region on Latios or Latias was something that we had never seen before, and I loved it so much. This took the idea of flying and brought it to a whole new level and higher height. In either the day or night, flying around Hoenn is beautiful. While it may not be as quick as flying, it's definitely a mesmerizing experience. Getting so many starters from Professor Birch was also great. While Professor Sycamore was kind enough to give us Kalos and Kanto starters, Professor Birch gave us so many more. While he gave us a Hoenn starter at the beginning, he let us choose a Johto starter for becoming champion, a Sinnoh starter for clearing the Delta episode, and a Unova starter for beating the champion and the Elite Four twice. Man, those were some awesome prizes for him to give us after all our hard work. But what I think my favorite addition is Zinnia. Not just was the Delta episode so much fun and really cool, she was a welcomed addition to the story. Her job as lore keeper and teaching us new things about Rayquaza was really cool. Now, I really want a Pokemon Legends game on Hoenn. Zinnia became my favorite character, and she was so welcomed that I really wish she made an appearance in the main anime. It would have been great to have had her in a special, especially seeing her take on Lysander with all the gym leaders and Steven Stone. She really would have added something special to that. While we just talked on things that were welcomed for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, I'm going to talk on things that I didn't enjoy about the games and what I think could have been better. First of all, I hated that you couldn't decide what you looked like, as it was only a default appearance of either May or Brendan. The fact that this was the generation that introduced the feature of changing clothes and what you looked like in X and Y, and they didn't bring it over for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was so annoying. Was it really that hard to program? Well, it's cool that Brendan and May both wear outfits that are a mix of the Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald outfits. I would have loved to have seen the Ruby, Sapphire old outfits to wear again. Even the Emerald outfit would have been great to change into. While I do think it's nice that we could change outfits for the contests, it's kind of annoying that's all you could do and you couldn't keep that on. It's a little ironic that the only character that could change outfits in the game was Cosplay Pikachu with its several costumes. I also wish that we got Battle Frontier. It's just so upsetting to go to the Battle Resort only to see that it's under construction. And since there was no DLC for this game, it'll sadly always be there to taunt us, as it will never be done. Battle Frontier was so much fun in Emerald, Platinum, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It gave us many hours in post-game, and it also was a lot of fun trying to get the Silver and Gold marks. I honestly would have just settled for the Battle Tower like in the old games. I also would have liked it if we could rematch all the gym leaders at the Battle Resort, as that would have been really cool to see what their upgraded teams would have looked like with a ton of new Pokemon that were introduced in the last 3 generations. Also, this would have been a great way to give gym leaders Mega Evolution Pokemon, as this would have made post-game a lot of fun. Would you like to see gym leaders with Megas? While Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were welcome games and great remakes, I think like many of you, we should have gotten Pokemon Z, as so many of us were curious about Zygarde. Thankfully, we are getting Legends Z to A in 2025, 12 years after X and Y, but I think a lot of us were curious and wanted to see what they could have done with Zygarde in the Hoenn region. They could have done something with Zygarde and its forms in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but sadly, we had to wait for Sun and Moon to do something with Zygarde. And while it was fun to see and use its 3 forms, it kind of felt a little late by then, as we were no longer in Gen 6. We sure have gotten a lot of Pokemon remake games over the years. Some are bad, and some are really good. If I am to rank the top 3 best ones, here's what my list would be. Starting off at number 3, we have Fire Red and Leaf Green. These were the first ever remakes that Pokemon did, and because of their success, they paved the way for every other remake that we've gotten. It was a nice welcome back to the Kanto region, and it also was a welcome to the Kanto region, as it let some of us experience what we missed in the 90s. It was the original Pokemon games, but made for the modern day. Number 2, of course, will go to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, as it was everything that a remake should be, but with more added. It was also a welcome back, not just to the Hoenn region, but when Pokemon was getting really good. Gen 3 is where Pokemon started getting good and making a lot of changes for the better. This remake does the exact same thing, showing us some new ideas. While not every one of them stayed going forward, it was still really cool for what they brought to the table. But of course, number 1 will go to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, as so many of us Pokemon fans hold these games in such high regards as some of the greatest remakes ever made for so many good reasons, and whatever your reason is, I think you'll agree. Johto had a lot of problems in Gen 2. Gen 4 came around and fixed every single one of them, and it finally showed me all the positives I had with this region. With how good they are to this day, I don't think that we're ever going to have another remake that Pokemon makes that'll ever hold a candle to Heart Gold and Soul Silver. All in all, and all things considered, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are not only great remakes, but they also work so well for those who never got a chance to play the Hoenn region in the Game Boy Advanced era, with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. These games are a happy welcome to Pokemon fans of the past as well as to the new ones. I highly suggest visiting Hoenn again in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Whether you played the games or you never had the chance to, I highly recommend playing it 10 years later to go back to times when things were simpler as well as amazing. While it may have its flaws, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did everything you would want done right for a remake. Not only did it improve on the original, but it added even more as well as great new characters. They fit in so well that they feel that they've always been a part of the series since the 3rd generation. Also, the Primal Reversion and Mega Evolution collided so well hand in hand that these games found the perfect balance of special gimmicks that none of them ever felt better than the other. For the final remake of the core series game of the DS and 3DS era, it went out on a very high note. Since I started in the Hoenn region with Emerald, this was not only a bit of a homecoming for me, but it was everything that I could ask for to see Hoenn reimagined. These characters, the Pokemon, and even the story is familiar, but at the same time, it feels new and reinvented in the best ways possible. Playing it 10 years after I got it gave me such a rush of emotions. It was great to go back to the Hoenn region, as it's a region like no other. You can explore Hoenn not just from the land, but you can also go into the deepest depths of the ocean and the highest heights of the sky. Whether you play in the Hoenn region in either the original games or the remakes, our super ancient weather trio makes certain of one thing for the Hoenn region. In clear skies, sunshine, or rainfall, Hoenn is the region of balance, where the land, the sea, and the sky collide as one. If you happen to own a copy of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, today I'd say fire it up and maybe check out your old team as well as how far you got in the game. If you want to start all over again, go for it. I think that you're going to have a great adventure going back in the Hoenn region. It really is a region like no other. Before we end this, I just have a few questions for you. When it came to the Hoenn starters, who's the one that you began your adventure with? Did you start with Trico? Did you go with Torchic? Or did you go with Mudkip? The Hoenn region sure introduced a lot of new Pokemon, and we always had that team of 6 that we had when we took on the champion. What was your champion team looking like, and who did your 6 members include? When it came time to choosing a game, did you either choose Omega Ruby or Alpha Sapphire? If you got both of them, what was the first one that you started off in? Since a lot of us really enjoy seeing Mega Evolution happen, and we're really excited for it coming back in Legends Z to A, what did you like best about Gen 6? Did you like the Mega Evolution, or did you find Primal Reversion a little cooler? We sure were introduced to a lot of legendary Pokemon in the Hoenn region. Out of all of them, who is your favorite Hoenn legendary Pokemon? And since we got a new Legends game coming very soon, Legends Z to A after Legends Arceus, do you think that the Hoenn region would be a really cool region to go back in time to and maybe see other forms of Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza? It's still just crazy that it's been 10 years since these games came out. As I said before, time flies when you're having fun and playing games. Well, if you liked what you saw, please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want to answer any of the questions that I just threw at you, you have an idea that you want turned into a video, or you want me to cover something that's going on in the Pokemon current events, then please comment. And if you liked what you saw and you want to see more, smash the subscribe button. As a Pokemon professor, it's my job to teach trainers like all of you. So I hope that you share my videos with other trainers out there. I hope that you enjoyed the Hoenn region and enjoyed hearing what I had to say about it. Thanks for watching, trainers. Palm out.